to Mecca via Jerusalem, a city that has since become the religious focus of a diversity of spiritual movements.
These priests plodding up the mountainside are veritable relics of bygone times. There are now no more than 450 of them. They constitute the smallest and most ancient sect known to the world. They are the last descendants of the tribe of Levi, the Samaritans. Three times a year, the whole community gathers on a mountaintop, Mount Gerizim, 40 miles from Jerusalem. There, as in the time of Moses, they pay tribute to the Almighty, the God of Abraham, for the Samaritans claim that only they have remained the true sons of Abraham. Their holy mountain is not that of the Jews in Jerusalem, chosen by David to build the temple, but Mount Gerizim. According to the Samaritans, it is here that Abraham stopped to sacrifice his son, Isaac. With his Torah, the high priest takes his little tribe towards the top of the mountain. He firmly states that he is the 147th descendant of Aaron, Moses' brother. On the spot where Abraham made his sacrifice, the high priest finally uncovers the scroll of the law. The same motions as in former times when Moses presented the Israelites with the 10 Commandments. A century ago, travelers could account for no more than 100 or so Samaritans, and anthropologists were predicting that this race would become extinct. So it is nothing short of a miracle that today the Samaritans are an active community of 450 people belonging to 5 different families. Many, unfortunately, are retarded, owing to generations of interbreeding. More than 5% of its members have physical and mental deficiencies of a fairly serious nature, such as deafness and dumbness. These children will never hear or speak. It is at Easter that the most important Samaritan ceremony takes place. It commemorates the flight from Egypt. Just as the sun is about to set over the horizon, every family slaughters a lamb. The raucous voice of the high priest announces the sacrifice. The faithful dip their fingers into the blood of the sacrificial lamb and mark their foreheads with it, thus following the rules of Exodus to the letter. The Jews, however, have always refused to recognize the Samaritans as descendants of Abraham. Of the sumptuous edifice that Solomon and later Herod had built, there remains but one wall, which exiled Jews have been turning to over the centuries. "If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand wither away," proclaimed the prophet. And for 2,000 years, Jews have been lamenting increasingly before these remains of the temple. In the last century, Orthodox Jews, the Hasidim from Central Europe, set up the quaint district of Mecca, a truly Polish ghetto transplanted into Israel. It forms a picturesque world, peopled with mystic rabbis, living out of our time, devoting themselves to prayer and study. Though part of Judaism, the Hasidic movement created a new form of spirituality based on constant allegiance to God. It is lived in the most menial tasks of day-to-day life. Every gesture, every word, every thought is conditioned by the omnipresence of the Almighty. The study of the Torah, the Talmud, the Kabbalah is the sole passion of these young people who, in common with the Samaritans, practice strict observance of the law. Hence, they live a kind of spiritual and material self-sufficiency which sets them apart from the other Jews. Nonetheless, religious fervor by no means precludes joy, for this fervor bears the stamp of enthusiasm. Music and dancing express the vigor of the Hasidic soul. Once a year, to commemorate Lag Baomer, the Hasidim pay their respect to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai at his tomb in Galilee. To the accompaniment of the nostalgic wailings of melodies brought back from the ghettos, pilgrims from all over Israel mingle with the rabbis of Mea Shearim. Throughout these days devoted to praying, young students will move among the crowd and preach observance of the law. During morning weekday prayers, as a reminder of their obligation to keep the law, the students offer to fasten phylacteries to the left arm and forehead of male passers-by. At night, they join their rabbis in dances, which, although joyful, are tinged with sadness and nostalgia. Let joy be upon your face, but may it never wholly fill your heart, for until the day of redemption, the Jewish heart must bear the indelible affliction of the destruction of the temple and the exile from Israel. The kingdom of the seers and biblical prophets, the eroded hills of the desert of Judea, were also the refuge of the first Christian hermits. Around the caves which served as retreats, monasteries were built. In former times, they were inhabited by thousands of monks. Today, there remain but a few old men. Nevertheless, once a year, the monks' isolation is broken by Greek pilgrims who come to celebrate Holy Week in Jerusalem. This monk is announcing the pilgrims' arrival. They have been dropped by coaches in the very heart of the desert. A long and arduous walk awaits them before reaching the monastery, clinging to the side of a ravine. Their aim? To meditate for a few minutes before the icons and relics of the monks massacred by the Persians. The Greek Orthodox Holy Week in Jerusalem focuses on Christ's tomb and through a host of ceremonies recalls the pomp of Byzantium and the faith of the Middle Ages. On Holy Thursday at dawn, preceded by 12 monks, the Patriarch of Jerusalem appears in the square before the Holy Sepulchre. The Patriarch is about to repeat Christ's gesture of humility towards his disciples, the ceremony of the washing of feet. The next day, Good Friday, the day of the Passion of Jesus, religious fever runs high. It will be difficult to contain the crowd when a monk bearing the cross comes down the Via Dolorosa on his way to the Holy Sepulchre. The tension reaches its climax on Holy Saturday. On that day, all the Christian sects join in the Greek procession around the tomb of Christ. As every year, the crowd is anxiously awaiting the miracle. A candle placed inside the tomb will light up supernaturally. This miraculous flame, symbolizing the light of the resurrected Christ, will then be passed on to the thousands of faithful. Adjacent to the Greek Orthodox quarter live the Armenians, who have been in Jerusalem for 15 centuries. They are a very ancient people, the first to have taken on Christianity as a state religion in the year 301, that is, 12 years before its official recognition by the Emperor Constantine. The Armenian National Church has therefore always demonstrated its independence from Rome and Byzantium, to such a point that it was finally condemned for heresy in the 5th century. On Easter Sunday, in the presence of the 3,500 members of the community, a highly picturesque ceremony takes place, the blessing of the four corners of the earth, which formerly this people celebrated on the green hills of their native Armenia. The west for the kingdom of Armenia, the east for the church and the clergy, the north for the towns and the country, the south for abundant harvests. Today, this ceremony would seem to be addressed more to the diaspora of several million Armenians exiled throughout the world since the 1915 massacres. The Coptic Christians of Pharaonic Egypt cross the Armenian quarter. They owe allegiance only to the Patriarch of Alexandria, and in their monasteries and churches, they keep up something of the grandeur and mystery of the temples of the Pharaohs. Was it the course of the Nile that led Coptic Christians from Alexandria to the kingdom of Abyssinia? In any event, Ethiopia is Christian, but with Judaic antecedents. Looking at these pictures, one can imagine the Queen of Sheba's caravan on its way to Jerusalem to visit Solomon. It is claimed that she brought back with her a son and the Judaic religion, which has been kept alive by the Falashas, black Jews who conform strictly to the law of Moses. As for the Ethiopian church, it has maintained observance of the Sabbath, the distinction between clean and unclean animals, and circumcision. From Coptic rite, it has borrowed the Psalms, penance, and monastic life. The monks and hermits are extremely influential. They come down from their retreats on religious feast days and gather crowds which listen to them devoutly. This extraordinary phenomenon of syncretism under the tropical sun has given rise to an ostentatious ceremony. 200 deacons, holding a prayer stick in one hand and a sistrum in the other, in a long, undulating and murmuring line, mime King David's dance before the Ark of the Covenant. At the end of the ceremony, the faithful plunge into a pool hollowed out in the sanctuary. The water is stagnant, but is considered to be purifying. The cross is also plunged into this miraculous water. But the most moving ceremony of these African Christians takes place in Jerusalem at Easter, at the very source of Christian revelation. Here, in the flickering candlelight, the pilgrims turn and turn around on the roof of the Holy Sepulchre, seeking Christ's body through the night of Easter Saturday. holy town of Judaism and Christianity, and the holy town of Islam, too. Under this dome lies the famous rock of Abraham's sacrifice. But a Muslim belief makes this rock even dearer to them. It is from here that Muhammad was raised up to heaven, mounting his horse, El-Burak, to talk to Adam and Jesus. And did not the Prophet instruct his first disciples to turn towards this rock, the center of the world, when they prayed? On the forecourt of the temple, the Sunnite from Palestine, turning towards Mecca, join in Friday prayers during Ramadan. The Muezzin chants verses from the Quran, the book revealed to Muhammad by the Archangel Gabriel, to which the whole of Muslim life is subject. Islam means submission. To the remotest parts of the Muslim world, Quranic schools teach their pupils the art of making the word of God resound in Arabic.
ولا تشطط واهدنا إلى سواء الصراط وشددنا ملكه.
The Muslims from Jerusalem so venerate the Rock of Abraham that the pilgrims, as soon as they are back from Mecca, decorate the fronts of their houses with symbols of the two holy cities, the dome side by side with the Kaaba. It is towards Abraham that these pilgrims are making their way, after disembarking on Arabian soil, to go, once in their lives, on the Hajj, the great pilgrimage. Most of the ritual motions they perform here for a few days will bring to mind memories of Nabi Ibrahim, the man they consider their great forefather. Between the sacred hills of Marwa and Safa, 4 times they reenact the pursuit of Agar, the concubine whom Abraham abandoned in what at that time was the desert wilderness of Mecca with her infant Ishmael. They were saved at the last moment by water, which miraculously gushed up from the springs of Zemzem. In the very neighborhood of Mecca itself, 3 mornings in succession, the pilgrims act out the stoning of Satan. And thus they bring to mind Abraham and Agar stoning the devil who had come to entice them not to obey God in sacrificing their son, Ishmael. As we contemplate this vast fraternity, we may conjure up a vision which would put an end to the instinctive mistrust that divides the sons of Abraham, so that this family quarrel, which has lasted for 4,000 years, may finally be ended.